Well, professionally, I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist with a private practice in Los Angeles, California. I wrote a book called United States of Fear: How America Fell Victim to a Mass Delusional Psychosis.
You've worked with countless children and families through the years. How has it changed your opinion regarding the public school system?
I would have said 2 or 3 years ago, there are good public schools and there are bad public schools. Find a good one and send your kid to it. Don't waste your money on private. I have now begun to tell parents for the first time in my career, in the last year, take your children out of school. The government school system is not only a failure, it is irredeemable. The school system is controlled, utterly controlled, by teachers' unions and advocates, meaning those who go into the schools to proselytize their political ideology on your children. They have no other purpose, no other function, and they have taken over entirely. We would be better off if all Americans pulled their kids out of the government schools and either did homeschooling or built their own schools in their local communities. That would cause the corrupt, rotten, termite-infested structure to finally collapse on its own weight, and then we could rebuild on a local level from the ground up. I can hardly believe I'm saying that now, because just 2 or 3 years ago, I would have thought that that is extreme, ridiculous, and unnecessary. I believe not only is it possible, it is actually requisite now for Americans to do that. But you have to place your children first. You're going to have to give something up, something, in order to protect your child's growth and future. And so that's really the question, fundamentally. It's not, is the school good, is the school bad? The school's bad. It's just bad. The real question is, what are you willing as a parent to invest in and to sacrifice to make sure that your child has every opportunity to succeed? Do you want to be a real parent or not? And I know that's a blunt and direct question, but that is the real question, and that's the question you have to ask yourself.
And in terms of university?
Don't bother. Generally speaking, the university is a cesspool. It is a moral wasteland. It is an indoctrination camp. If you send your child to a university for any reason other than to get a degree in STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, or to prepare for medical school, law school, professional school, and even then I think it's probably not a good idea. But putting that aside, any other purpose of going to an undergraduate university will turn out your child to a worse person at the end than he or she was at the outset. Your child will leave that university believing that America is a hateful, racist country, that men are sexual predators, that women are abused victims of toxic masculinity, and that the only people that deserve to get a leg up are the marginalized classes. That is such a sick, perverse, destructive philosophy to force feed a young, naive, uninformed brain of a 17 or 18-year-old for 4 years, that there may be no way to correct that after 4 years. You will have literally sent your child into a cult that severs all ties from you for 4 years and then have him or her come back to you and very likely hate you and hate everything that you stand for. You are throwing your children to the wolves if you send them to a university. There is no point in doing it. Just stop. If your child insists, send your child with support to a internship program for job training, to a trade school even. Trade schools are fantastic ways to learn the ways of the world and how things really function. Even if that person doesn't want to go into the trade eventually, it creates a strong foundation for acknowledging and accepting reality and accepting that the world doesn't spin the way that you wish it does. It just spins because it does. And then you will become largely inoculated to the propagandizing, the lies, the misinformation, all of the destruction that we're being force-fed through media and government schools and universities. That's the way to go. It's not by kicking your kid from government school into university thinking, well, at the university level, things will get better. They only get worse the higher up you go.
Who were you before the announcement of the pandemic, And then who are you today? What has changed?
One thing that's really shifted for me is my trust in medicine, in the medical establishment, and to a certain degree in government. In the medical establishment, I used to follow pronouncements, guidelines, recommendations from medical associations like the California Medical Association or the American Academy of Pediatrics or the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. I have absolutely no confidence in those organizations anymore. Not only do I think that they're inept, I think they're actually harming children. And when the AMA comes out, as it did recently, with a public policy statement announcing that they no longer support placing biological sex on birth certificates, that's not an error. That's not a overreach. That is an ideological position intentionally designed to cause distress, harm, and a schism in our society, to destroy children and families. When the California Medical Association comes out with its pronouncement, as it did last year, that they support chemical castration of young girls without parental consent because they happen to have a mental illness and confusion about their gender, that's not an error. I would even go so far as to say that my position has changed from being trustful to having come to recognize the existence of evil.
In terms of this war between masculinity and femininity, what are you witnessing from the inside through your work?
I have seen over the years in my practice a steady decline in the expression of healthy masculinity and healthy femininity amongst my patients. In the last 2 years, I've seen a complete collapse. Men in my practice, especially younger men in their teen years, their 20s, early 30s, have no ability to express desire for women in a healthy way, to interact with women verbally and socially in a healthy way, and many of them have no desire to even be engaged in a sexual relationship with a woman. They have substituted their libido and their expression of libido by pursuing women, which is a healthy thing for men to do. If men stop pursuing women, we're done. We don't have more human beings. They're no longer doing that. They're now sitting at home playing video games and watching porn because it's safer and it's easier to do that. And they will never be rejected, and they will never be criticized. They will never be told that they are toxic, that they are part of the patriarchy, that they are misogynistic, that they are committing a social faux pas. So they have given up. They've just taken themselves out of the dating world. They've taken themselves out of the social world with women. And women, on their part, are completely perplexed. They don't know what to do. They're alone. They feel abandoned. They feel unattractive. They feel undesirable. They can't find a date, much less a husband. They can't get married. They can't have children. The separation between the male and the female is almost complete now. And it's due specifically to the ongoing attacks against masculinity and the degradation of femininity, the propaganda that has been pushed by the radical feminists that define success for women to be competition with men, vanquishing men, full and complete independence from men. You don't need a man, which is a biological and social lie. That has been so successful that now both men and both women think that they can live apart. But the truth is they can't, because when they come into my practice and I ask them how they're doing, they're not doing well. The men are completely without a course. They are listless. They are dysphoric. They are dysthymic. The women are depressed and anxious, and none of them are talking to one another. So this attack on masculinity and femininity is, in my view, undergirding a large degree of the psychological distress, particularly in younger people right now. And as they continue to lead these separate, parallel paths of isolation, there will be no way for them to develop the skills and even the desires that are necessary for them to get together and to marry and to have children and develop families. And if our family structure is lost in the next generation, what do we have left? We're just a bunch of listless individuals living our lives out virtually behind a computer screen, working remotely, and following the orders of the government. That, to me, is a very, very dystopian future.
Is this by design? And if so, to what end?
I think this is intentional. And I think that because it is so antithetical to humanity, to biology, to social norms that have proven to be successful for centuries, it can't be an error. This is not a hysterical reaction to an incident that occurred at a university and an overcorrection. This is steady. This is ramped up month by month, year after year. And I believe that the end point, the goal, is really to create a chaotic, dysfunctional, non-family, non-community-based society that is so dependent on others. And I don't mean parents, I don't mean community, I mean others like government figures, like corporations, like media organizations, that there's never going to be any reason for those in power to worry about losing their status. They have developed essentially a monopoly now. We don't rely on our government, at least not historically, for telling us what pronouns to use, for what medications to take, for what textbooks should be used in our schools, but we're allowing all of that. And that is a direct result of this concerted effort to strip away interpersonal connections. Once you kill the male-female connection, everything else is easy. Then you can take away the kids from the parents. You can take away the neighbors, the grandparents. Pretty soon everybody is just living in little isolated chambers. And then it's very easy to control people. This technique has been used in the 20th century by every totalitarian regime. China, for example, shaved the heads of women, put them all in unattractive asexual clothes, did the same thing for the men. They asexualized the population so that there's no more desire, no more bipolarity of male and female. Everybody looks like an automaton, a reproduction of the state. And then what do? Rather than turning towards one another, they turn towards the state. That's what's going on. That's the plan. That's where we're headed.